This is the Balanced Growth Show with Dr. Travis Perry, helping successful business professionals like you achieve balance in their lives.
Welcome to another episode of the Balanced Advisor podcast. I am your host, Dr. Travis Perry. Today, we get to be privileged to chat with 401 Jake, aka Jake Rushton. He started the financial industry 17 years ago. During the first decade, he spent time learning many different specialties, including sales, marketing operations, compliance, collateral management, and 401k plans. Over the last 7 years, Jake has built two successful 401k practices with a health benefits consulting firm, as well as a private wealth management firm. He also has an online community for advisors and wholesalers in the 401k industry called 401 Club. Welcome, Jake, to the show.
Thanks, Travis. Excited to be here.
Yeah, it was great to get to know you a little bit in the pre-show. And we're just mentioning how I didn't even know Jake's last name until I saw him today on the calendar, got to know him a little bit better because his marketing is so spectacular. You're the 401k guy, like you're 401 Jake. So that's how I know you. Should I call you Jake? Is that okay for the show?
Yeah, that's totally fine. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, Jake, we know you got into the industry about 17 years ago. What got you here? Tell us your story. How did you get so, excited about 401ks and, kind of bring us up to speed?
Yeah. It was an interesting ride. I think a lot of advisors jump into the industry not really knowing what they're going to do. They try a few different things. I went down the path of working in operations, and then I went into compliance, and I kept running into this barrier of like, I want to make more money. I'm way more ambitious than this. I like the security of, a salaried position, but I, for some reason, it took me a while to figure out that sales was something I shouldn't be afraid of. And all during those first 10 years, 401k was kind of hanging out there on the sidelines, like no one really paid attention to them. The advisors that I was working with, it was kind of passive to them. Like they just did as little as possible. And I always felt that was strange. I would log in and check on, where checks coming in, and I'd look how many people were involved here, and they were getting no attention. And it just didn't make sense to me. And I just never really understood it. And so it wasn't until I finally found this opportunity to jump into 401k that I found my passion. I found where I needed to be. I found a place that could educate and not necessarily advise. There's a little bit difference there. And that's kind of the way that I've always operated.
Nice. I love that. It's become your specialty. There's a lot of education needed in this area. You're also a spectacular brander and marketer. So a lot of that I'm sure goes into it, which we'll talk about here a little bit later. Yeah, I know you're a family man. I know you've got, family close to your heart. And I know that health is important to you. Talked a little bit about that in the pre-show, but let's talk about balance for a second. What is your definition of balance? And maybe how does that family component, health component, how does this kind of all, work together? What's your analogy of balance?
Well, I think everybody has a different way of looking at balance. And for me, it's about priorities. It's about what you spend your time doing. And it's not having all this downtime. Like I do not do well if there's not something going on. I'm very busy constantly. And it's trying to change that from busyness that just doesn't really do anything for me to things that I do value. And that might not be valuable to other people, but for me, it makes sense. So making your health a priority is a big deal for me. I ran cross country in college, paid for my school that way. My wife, same with softball. So we're very focused on sports and staying healthy. And that's just a part of our family culture. So with 5 kids at home, they're in every sport they want to try. We go for it. So balance is different for everybody, but for me, it's almost a chaotic balance. And that's what I like.
Yeah. So keeping busy, like that's a big part of it, of having the balance. Yet so many people struggle, especially advisors, like they're too busy, right? Or they're busy in the wrong things.
Right.
So let's talk about like what you do well, because you've been able to market and kind of scale and grow. How are you able to grow, scale, market what you're doing, your 401 club? And and your brand and your presence and your speaking and everything, how you're able to do that and keep the balance that makes sense for you.
The biggest thing is just to take action. Honestly, way too many of us think through and wonder if we should try something and talk about ideas, but it's a matter of like going and realizing that nothing's ever done. Nothing's ever complete. One of my first jobs I had right out of high school was working at an RV store. I was teaching people how to use their RVs they bought, but during the downtime, we would clean them because constantly they're just getting dirty. It was never done. I think of that very similar to anything you do in life, your family, your job, whatever it is, like it's never done. And so you've got to be comfortable with that. And all you got to do is continue to progress and try to get better and adjust and just, and not judging yourself to the point where if it's not where you want it yet, that crushes you, and it's okay. And things are going to start to maybe fall through the cracks, but some of those things probably should. And I think a huge thing that I did recently, the last couple of years, was shift, well, even more than that, probably 3 years, shift away from letting email drive my day. I think that's probably one of the biggest ways that advisors waste their time is letting any email come through and tell them exactly what to do in that moment. You've got to change that. And that's a big one. That really made an impact on my life. And it sounds like an easy thing, but for most of us, not jumping on every email as it comes in is for some reason a hard habit to break.
Oh, it is. In fact, there are 3 big time sucks for advisors. Number 1 and number 2, like just depends on who I'm talking to, but it's really close now. Social media, email. And I find advisors are bouncing back and forth between those two. Sometimes it is the same because their social media is updating them through their email, right? And they're getting notifications. But it's that constant feeling, right, of that dopamine rush, that hit that we get. What have you done to minimize that constant feeling? Do you delete notifications? Do you take it off your phone? Like, what have you done to minimize that, man?
Oh yeah, definitely. I pay attention to certain parts of social media. I mean, I'm on it a lot, but I'm much more focused on producing content for social media. So I would rather spend my time putting out content than consuming. And that is not a normal practice for most advisors. They're just consuming, they're just scrolling, right? Yeah, that's a waste. But if you're putting content out there, that's a big difference. You're actually adding value to other people's lives. But I do turn off notifications. I put my phone in work mode. Only a few people can get through. And I do that every single day. So, and I check emails real quick in the morning, usually at the gym in between sets, just to see if there's any fires and if there's anything I need to put on my list for the morning. But then I don't get on my email till the afternoon. So I have different opinions, I would say, about social media than probably most advisors and most people feel. I'm much more positive about it and look at the good side of it. But as far as letting people direct your life through email, I can't stand. So that one for me is a big one.
Amen. Being the proactive deciding factor of your future, your calendar, right? Taking the course of action into your hands. I get that from you. Yeah. At the same time, like social media, like there is a struggle here, like just the sheer fact of being on it. I find a lot of advisors get on to share something and they get caught. And then they're doing the scroll of death, right? 10 minutes later, oh man, what have I done? So, even today I did a training with an advisor that we talked about this. He does produce content and he, gets stuck in it. It's a constant battle. I know something that I do that I suggest to my clients is schedule time to be on social media for the express purpose of sharing content and searching out those individuals who you want to network with, so that you're not just doing the scroll of death, right? Because otherwise it's the algorithm that's putting in front of you content. I go as far as to have specific, I go as far as to have like a group of individuals that I follow and I make sure that I'm contacting daily so that we're staying in contact with each other, and it helps improve that algorithm. So I'm seeing more of them and they're seeing more of me. So it makes a ton of sense. What what do you suggest for advisors if you were to give them, a tip to say, hey, social media can be your friend. Social media can be a helper, because it is for me. Probably 95% of our business comes through LinkedIn, social media, because of how we've chosen to use it. So what works for you?
I think first understanding the context of each platform, right? So I think it's important to note that this is where the attention is. So trying to spend tons of time and money into other places like your website and other things to get people there, there's just not there. So you can't ignore it. So you gotta have a balance. You've got to have ways for people to find you on there, because if someone refers your name, that's the first thing they're going to go is look you up. And if there's nothing there, well, your social proof's kind of you missed your chance. So what I tell people, and there's a couple ways you can look at, like I like the scheduling time. I do that every day where I schedule time just to post content. And that's got to be a priority, because if you just kick it down the road every day and say, oh, I'll get to content, and you never will. You've got to do it first thing in the morning. Otherwise, it's not going to happen. You've also got to have a habit of collecting content ideas for that scheduled time. So if you want to be producing content, you can't sit down for that hour or half hour and think of what you're going to do, because you're not going to be in the right mindset. You're going to be trying to think like a salesperson of trying to convince somebody in some post that they should hire you to do something. That's not what social media is for. So you've got to collect what's happening, the problems you're facing. You've got to document your day. I mean, yesterday I did a post. I just did video of my day. Worked from the grocery store at Harmon's. I worked at the library. I just wanted to get away from my kids for the day and have some time to really do some deeper work. And I just documented that. And then I recorded all the video. I put it into an app, and I did a voiceover and in 1 minute explain what I did through the day and how that impacted my thought process, made me more creative because I got away from my normal space. It took me a few minutes, but that provided some value and maybe would get some advisor to change their day up a little bit and realize there's some there. On the flip side, if you want to get more engagement with your target audience, because you're probably only seeing other advisors because that's who you're engaging with, you've got to do what I call the 2% rule. Spend 30 minutes a day. It's 2% of your day, whether it's 10 minutes here, 10 minutes there, whatever. You're watching TV, you're in a car. I don't know. You can squeeze it in. Instead of just scrolling, use that 30 minutes to make thoughtful comments on your target audience, their post, and don't make them salesy. Don't make them, ask for anything. Literally just add value to whatever they put out in the world to hopefully get a little bit of attention from them, to have some awareness of who you are. And that's where having your profile set up in an effective way, because if they see your thoughtful comment, they're going to click on it and go to your profile. And if it's not clear on what kind of results or something you could do for them, you missed your shot again. So there's a lot of little things along the way, but it has to be part of your day. You cannot ignore social media. It's the world we live in. It's made us more transparent, and I think it's made us better people. And it does have negative effects to some people who look at it that way, but I think there's a lot more positive.
Yeah, absolutely. Boundaries, a clear, system and direction that you mentioned, I think is key. I love that 2% rule. I've heard this before, and that's exactly why I think likes and, loves and now laughs that's great. But thought or comments are gold, right? Comments are gold. And, I make an effort to reach out to my influencers who influence advisors. But that's a really good point of making comments on advisors themselves. If that's my target audience, right? Which it is, I want to help advisors. So if I'm an advisor and I know I'm wanting to help dentists, and there's dentists out there making comments, I'm going to be commenting on their posts so they can reach back out. Well, great point, Stick. I really appreciate it.
You got to go where they are, right?
Yeah, you got to be where they're at. Yeah.
If they're not on LinkedIn, maybe they're on TikTok. You got to go where they are, and you can't. You're not going to force them to come back to all your places, and that's fine. What you want to do is at least get some attention and adding some value to their comments, but never ignore when people are making comments on yours as well. You do a good job of that, of responding to every comment on all your posts. I see way too many advisors just do nothing. That's a missed opportunity. That's like you're ignoring somebody in a happy hour that's talking to you and you just turn the other way. Like, that's not cool. So don't do that.
Yeah, no, 100%. Yeah, I absolutely, like, that's my goal. Like, make sure I reach out everybody within like a 24-hour period. because some people may comment at 10 p.m. I'm not jumping on my phone at 10 p.m. I can't be the balance guy, commenting people at night, especially when LinkedIn like tells you what time you posted. It's like, you can't do that. But the next morning when I have time to do, a LinkedIn advertising and things, I will jump on there, marketing, and I will comment back, even if it's just a quick thank you. You're absolutely correct. Appreciate that. Really good stuff here. And, this is what makes you 401 Jake. And so let's talk about this. Like, you've built a brand, you've been able to scale a lot of what you're doing and kind of grow your firm because of your organic, outreach and things. And you're teaching others to do this too. Let me ask you, based on, I know what your definition of balance is: priorities, right? It's knowing what those priorities are, making time for them, which is awesome. That's what most advisors tell me. And that's why we wrote the book, Achieving Balance. It's all about priorities, how to put them in order, how to make time for them, hence the Make Time Institute. So that said, what is your personal biggest struggle with trying to scale your business, your brand, your marketing? How are you scaling this? What's probably your biggest struggle with doing that without losing that balance? Be real with us. What are some struggles you face there?
Honestly, the biggest thing for me is handing off things. So this has always been a struggle for me, and I've done better with it in my 401k practice, like actually managing clients for the last few years. But trying to do everything myself is a huge thing that I need to change, right? And so I think there's a really interesting shift now of more and more people working as independent contractors and getting really high quality people to do their best skill for multiple different companies and not necessarily just one. And so I'm working on ways to better scale my business by using some of those people and building out some other ways to help advisors do the same, right? Because there's a certain point where some advisors never cross that line where they can actually scale a business because they just do it all themselves. And then they wonder why they didn't get anywhere. So that's a huge struggle for me. And when I think about growing my practice, another one is just learning to say no, like not chasing every opportunity because I'm always open. I'm always wanting more clients. You don't need to have like 100 clients to be successful. You need to have the right 20, the right 30, and provide way more value to those at a higher cost because they're getting more for it. And you're going to have more time to do the priorities you want. So I'm trying to do that really well this third time around and be kind of picky on who I'm willing to give my attention to. And I'm okay if I have to turn down, some clients that I know are going to be a hassle, that aren't really understanding the value and want something cheap. That's not me. So, and not to say that it's not worth it. It's just, that's a huge problem for a lot of advisors. They're always chasing. They're once the deal's done, they're on to the next one. Like that's not a great lifestyle.
It's absolutely not. I remember starting, because I talked about this in several other podcasts, episodes that we've done, but this idea of starting at a big firm, you're like spaghetti throwing onto the wall to see if you stick. Like, are you done? Are you going to stick with the company? And, I felt that way. I wondered, if I just got to put in my 5 years or my 100, contracts, whatever it is, what do I need to get to before I can finally take a break? And I interviewed some guys who were still, they were 20 years in the firm. And I said, so how's it going? Like, are you able to breathe yet? And the answer was no. The answer was no. I'm like, wait, what do you mean? Like, you're not taking time off and doing these? It's like, no, I'm still chasing. I'm like, what? I think some of this actually is the industry and maybe even the firm's expectation of you're continually chasing. And some of it might just be the maybe sales addictive cycle or whatever. It makes an advisor feel like, I've got to get to the next one. And I've seen advisors do this with goals. They accomplish the goal and it's on to the next one without enjoying or serving the client after they bring on a new client, right? They have a sales model. They don't have a service model. I think some of this is kind of related. Don't you think? You think there's some maybe industry influence, but maybe some personal, personality that really
personality traits. This is a tough industry to make it in, right? And so to make it, you've got to put like so much effort in. And that's a habit forming process. And so once you get there, like it's on to the next thing. And so I think that comes a certain point in life where you realize, like, what have I done? Like, what am I missing because I'm focused on this too much? And I've been through that. I mean, I turned 40 this year. It was a huge wake up call for me. And I've struggled with it because I'm just thinking, like, this is going fast, but also there's still a lot of time to go. And so I think the whole idea of what retirement is changing for the better. I think when I meet with plan participants and, employees and companies in 401ks, the idea of I'm going to work till I'm 65 and then I'm done, like that's not really the normal mindset anymore. And, advisors need to just like embrace that and understand that it is different and that your happiness is a part of your compensation. Whether you like it or not, it's not a dollar thing, but if you're unhappy and you make more money than you ever thought, like, is that worth it? And so I'm a big believer in enjoying every single day. And if you go, I think it's an old Steve Jobs quote, right? Like if you look at yourself in the mirror and enjoy what you're doing and are happy, then there's only so long you can go. You've got to change it. And so I literally do that every day. I like kind of just think through at night, what went well, what didn't go well, what do I need to change? How can I make tomorrow better? And I wake up pumped to try again to make it the best day possible, because you don't know when it's going to end. So let's enjoy every minute, and you can't just vacation and party all the time, but you've got to put work in. But why not do the work you love? And that's sometimes hard for people to realize.
Amen to all that. I mean, I think you're exactly right. I think there's a personality habit forming process, 100%. And there is a FOMO feeling, like, what am I missing? You get to that point. So I'm 42, so I'm kind of there with you, man. Like, am I halfway through this thing? My dad died at 49. So I'm looking at going, I'm trying to make it to 50. And I'm like, that's my goal. Like, can I make it to 50? Can I keep going? Can I be healthy and not let stress get me down? Is there things I need to be doing? I make huge changes in my life. And I know a lot of advisors I've talked to that have kind of got to this point where you got to, where it's like, oh, balance needs to be a big part of it's health, it's relationships. This all needs to be super prioritized. So I appreciate you bringing this up a lot. I want to ask you another question that kind of goes along with this, because I absolutely agree with this idea that retirement is changing. But I also agree with what you're saying with advisors, that they're struggling on the habit forming process. I call this slipping into the workaholic trap. They started these habits that they began early at a big firm. And then it's like they really struggle. Like my friend who was in it for 20 years, still doing the same thing, chasing the same types of clients, not really ever getting anywhere, still working 50 hours a week. Let's talk about ego. I have a thought. I think ego has a lot to do with this. Personality and ego, we can talk about the whole Freudian complex here, but I think there's something going on where this industry does attract those who type A, ego-seeking individuals that hopefully like you, like me, realize what's more important in life and they make some changes, right? But how do you see ego as playing into this? You work with a lot of advisors, this is a struggle. What do you think, man? I'm just curious.
No, I agree. I mean, you have to be really thick-headed and thick-skinned to get through those initial years. And I think a big part of that is just lack of training, and people in the industry don't really want to share their secrets and helping you get a head start, right? I don't think there's a very great mentoring type of situation with most firms. It's kind of like, there's a new intern, like, go figure it out, and you come in, and it just depends on the path you take, right? Like I came up in the E-Trade world, like I was in the call center, like I was it had no long-term future for me there. I knew that, but I learned a lot fast. And people go different routes into this industry, but there's not a lot of clarity going into it on where you could go with it, and then what that could mean for your actual lifestyle. It's just constantly like, can you sell more? Can you get more? Can you make more money? And it's squeezing every single penny everywhere you can, until you reach a point where you're like, oh, like I gotta change. If we could teach people younger, earlier, and help them understand that path and give them a little bit of a head start, I just think I was in it 10 years, and 401k was a completely new world for me. I had absolutely no idea what I was doing, completely new language. Wholesalers were teaching me stuff, which some of it was good, some of it was bad because they were trying to sell product, right? There's not a good training system, which doesn't help. And then the egos are what help you pull through and be successful because you just have that drive and ambition.
Yeah, our ego's a double-edged sword. Like that's a two-edged sword. That's kind of what you're saying. Like it helped you survive, yet it's not really helping the industry move forward because there's no one really being the leader of like, hey, let me help you through this process. Let me help you get to where I'm at. Let me be the rainmaker. You know where I found this though? I found this in smaller boutique firms who have broken away from the big firms. They're like, I don't want to do business like that. And they specifically have brought people on to do just that, to mentor, to train, to help the industry. And this is where I usually stand on my soapbox and say, in order to change this industry exponentially, ongoing, growth for this industry to really be better balanced, we have to keep doing this. Like we have to be the mentors. We have to be balanced leaders ourselves, and then being willing to mentor others who are starting out. So yeah, I'm with you, man. I think that's very well said.
I love mentoring. Like that's one of my favorite parts of the Forum Club is I love when an advisor comes to me and they're just getting started. They have no idea what to do. And I can cut years off of their mistakes. I can literally just like, hey, this is what I did for 3 years. You're going to learn it all in a few hours or a few different meetings. I'm so excited about that for them because I don't feel like I'm losing anything to that. Even if they're in my market and like competing with me, I don't even care. I'm so far past that because there's so much need for better help in my 401k space that I don't feel like I have to give up to help others. And I think there is a huge issue with a lot of advisors where if they're not winning it, then they're losing and someone else is winning. And that's got to go away. Like we have to stop thinking that way.
Well said. And a great transition. I know you have the 401 club and you do mentoring, you speak, and you're, again, very proactive on social. People know you out there as 401 Jake. Tell us, what does the 401 club do? How does that actually help advisors who are trying to scale their 401 business to, really be better balanced? Let's be honest. Like, how is this helping them to be better balanced if they're getting mentoring and training from you?
Yeah, I mean, the Forum Club, it's continually changing. It's continually becoming more and more of what is being asked of it. So I didn't go into building the Forum Club up front. Like I actually created the name 401 Jake and the brand right when COVID hit. I was just at home. I was stuck. I'm like, what am I going to do? And so I created that brand. I started to record like an online course and I sent it to a few advisors and I was just trying to see if this would work. And they were all in a different spot. Some knew 401k, some didn't. And it just seemed like a community, what was missing because everybody, is a different area. So the club was born then and it became just this online community. And we started having just a weekly meeting. And I just kept bringing in different guests and just trying to see where this would go. And now it's turned into their separate kind of coaching. I do different events. I've done workshops all across the country, with different vendors to provide more value to their target market, which is advisors like myself. We're helping them scale their business, win more 401k plans, which sells more business for those vendors. So this whole movement we're seeing on TikTok with other industries of what's called user-generated content is kind of what I've been doing with the club. Like I didn't know it, but I started to provide value to help others win in a way that would help our industry raise up too. And so we get together every Thursday in the club. Like we're doing right after this podcast, every Thursday at 4:01 Eastern, we either jump on a Zoom meeting. I've been recently doing the LinkedIn audio events that they just came out with recently. It's kind of like Clubhouse where you don't have to worry about a camera. You just jump on with your headphones. And I'm just trying to build it out in a way that we can have a bigger group that wants to just participate in some of those. And then those that want to move quicker and faster will have a 401 Club Pro. So it's continually evolving and growing. And I think it's leading more towards the path of helping advisors communicate more effectively their brand, scale their personal brand, make sure they're winning business because of who they are and not rely so much on their firm. So if they get caught in a situation where they have to switch firms, they don't lose everything, that they have an asset, which is themselves, to rely on to help them continually provide for their family and their future.
Love that. Advisors want to learn more about 401 Club and how that can help them, market and essentially have a better work balance that leads to overall balance everywhere, right? What's the best way? I know I've got the website, www.401club.com. Is that the best place to get a hold of the content?
Yeah, that works. Probably just find me on LinkedIn. That'd probably be the best place. I'm very good at responding to my LinkedIn DMs. That's one of the first things that I always check and keep up on all of them. So you can do that, or you can go to the website and can contact me there. But both are good places to go.
It's been a fascinating conversation, Jake. 401 Jake, excuse me. This has been great. I've enjoyed getting kind of to the heart of some of these things that a lot of advisors struggle with, even discussing, articulating. You do a very well or very good job of articulating these concepts and understanding them, being real with your own audience and helping advisors out. So thank you for what you're doing for the industry.
Yeah, same to you. I think there's a huge need for what you do, obviously. And I love to see advisors, prioritize their lives better. And that's why I share a lot about me and my family all the time, so they can relate and understand that even though I'm busy and I'm trying to do a lot of things, I'm still at football practice every night, right? Like that's a priority and it's on the list. So you can do it too. So I love what you're doing.
Absolutely. Thanks, man. Thank you for your time. Thanks, everyone listening to this episode. We're talking, balance, growth, scaling. If you want to know more about that, go to 401club.com for help with from Jake and the club there. If you need help with balance issues, you can still go to travisperry.com, get my book, Achieving Balance. We're also interviewing now for the next book called Balance Growth, which is what we've been talking about. How do you grow your business, scale, while keeping that balance? It's super important. And Jake's been a great example of that. So once again, thank you all listeners. If you liked and you enjoyed this, share, subscribe, send it to an advisor who needs this help and some ideas that were shared here, hopefully nuggets were kernels of wisdom that we're able to get to the heart of some of these matters. Please share that up. Again, thank you, Jake, and thank you everyone for listening to the Balance Advisor podcast show. And remember, live life on purpose.
Thanks, Travis.